The crowd gasped as officers dragged a black woman out of the courthouse, only to discover, seconds too late, that she wasn't a suspect at all. She was the judge presiding over the case they were desperate to influence. What happened next would shake the entire legal system on both sides of the Atlantic. Right finger if you love shocking real-life style drama stories like this one. Smash subscribe so you never miss another unbelievable twist. Judge Amara Ellison woke before dawn, the same way she had every day since her appointment to the Superior Court, but on this particular morning she felt a strange sense of tension threading through the air like static before a storm, a tension that began with the echo of a news report describing a high-profile corruption case scheduled for hearing, a case tied to a police union scandal that had already rocked several states and stirred outrage in both the United States and the United Kingdom as commentators compared it to notorious international abuses of power. She stepped into her charcoal suit, polished her mother's silver bracelet, and left her apartment with the quiet dignity that had helped her survive years of being underestimated in law school, underestimated in courtrooms, underestimated in society, and now, ironically, underestimated even by the very people sworn to uphold the law she defended. As she approached the courthouse, she noticed an unusual cluster of police cruisers idling with engines humming low, officers muttering in tight circles as if rehearsing a narrative rather than preparing for security. Something in their posture felt off, and Amara's instincts, sharpened by years of reading juries and interrogating witnesses, whispered that she had walked directly into the center of something larger than the day's docket. She tightened her grip on her briefcase, aware that the case she was set to preside over involved whistleblowers exposing a chain of illegal detentions and falsified arrest records, and that several officers implicated in the scandal were furious enough to do anything to sabotage the proceedings. Still, she advanced, reminding herself that justice demanded presence, courage, and an unshakable spine. As she reached the marble steps, two officers she didn't recognize stepped into her path, blocking her with aggressive shoulders squared, their hands hovering a little too close to their holsters, and before she could even speak, another pair approached from behind, grabbing her arms under the false assumption, or convenient pretext, that she was interfering with an ongoing investigation. She tried to identify herself, but the officers barked over her voice, ordering her to stop resisting, twisting her wrists painfully despite her calm compliance. Passers-by gasped, some pulling out phones, capturing the moment a respected black female judge was forcefully dragged down the courthouse steps by the very institution she represented. The humiliation bit deep, not because of her pride but because she recognized the familiar pattern, profiling cloaked as protocol, intimidation masquerading as procedure, and she knew instantly this was no mistake but a deliberate attempt to remove her from presiding over the corruption case. As they hauled her toward a cruiser, she saw the courthouse chief clerk running toward them, waving papers frantically and yelling that the woman they were manhandling was Judge Ellison herself, but the officers ignored him until a senior sergeant, red-faced and breathless, arrived and froze in horror when he recognized her from judicial briefings. His realization came too late, however, because by then dozens of cameras had recorded everything. The officer's hands dropped away from her like they had touched fire, apologies spilling out in chaotic, stuttering fragments, but Amara stood in icy silence, straightening her clothes, her eyes locked not on the ones who grabbed her but on the cluster of officers in the distance, the ones who had watched, smirking, as if satisfied their plan was in motion. She told them she would not be intimidated, not today, not ever, and when she walked back up those steps, shoulders squared, the crowd followed her with a reverent hush, sensing that the real battle for justice had only just begun, and that this judge, this woman they tried to silence, was about to expose a scandal that ran much deeper than anyone had imagined. The courtroom buzzed with electric tension as Judge Amara Ellison took her seat on the bench, refusing to show even a flicker of the pain pulsing along her bruised wrists, because she understood that leadership required strength, especially in a room full of officers glaring at her with barely concealed resentment. The gallery was packed with journalists, activists, attorneys, and curious spectators who had seen the viral footage of her morning ordeal, footage now trending across the United States and the United Kingdom, sparking debates about systemic bias, racial profiling, and the dangerous blurred line between law enforcement loyalty and corruption. The prosecution presented whistleblower testimony describing how certain officers formed an underground network that manipulated evidence, targeted vulnerable citizens, and threatened anyone who dared expose them, and every detail poured into the record felt like salt in the wound of what she had just endured outside. Yet Amara remained controlled, her voice steady as she overruled objections clearly designed to stall proceedings. Midway through testimony, a sudden commotion erupted as a lawyer for the police union accused the court of bias, claiming the morning incident proved the judge had a personal grievance against officers, and demanded she recuse herself. The gallery gasped, but Amara delivered a masterful response, stating calmly that their actions had no bearing on her neutrality and that the only people compromised were those attempting to obstruct justice. As the afternoon shadows stretched across the courtroom floor, a twist emerged when one of the implicated officers, Detective Rourke, long considered untouchable, asked permission to testify unexpectedly. He appeared pale, jittery, glancing at the officers seated behind him as if fearing retaliation, and he revealed under oath that the group orchestrating corruption also orchestrated her removal that morning, planning to delay her appearance by staging an accidental detainment, expecting the judge replacement to be more sympathetic to police interests. The room erupted in shock, but before Amara could strike the gavel, the lights flickered, and a bomb threat echoed over a handheld radio someone left unmuted, causing panic. Security rushed forward, and for a moment the courtroom devolved into chaos. Amara, refusing to abandon her duty, ordered everyone to remain calm, but the officers loyal to the accused group tried to usher her out forcibly, for her own safety, which sent up alarms in her mind. They weren't protecting her, they were trying again to remove her. Instead of complying, she invoked emergency judicial authority, demanding U.S. Marshals take control of the room, and the marshals arrived swiftly, securing the space and placing several officers under immediate detention for interference. As the crowd settled, gasping at the dramatic shift in power, Amara sensed a deeper truth emerging. Someone higher up, someone influential, was orchestrating the chaos from behind the scenes, and Detective Rourke confessed with trembling lips that a mysterious patron, a political figure with ties in both US and UK law enforcement, was financing the illicit police network to manipulate court outcomes in multiple jurisdictions. The revelation sent a chill through the courtroom. For the first time, the corruption scandal was no longer local, it was international, systemic, and dangerous. And as Amara adjourned court under heavy marshal protection, she knew the storm was only beginning, and that her own life was now at greater risk than ever before, but she refused to retreat because justice, once threatened, demands absolute courage. That night, Judge Amara Ellison sat in her dimly lit chambers, surrounded by stacks of evidence, affidavits, and classified reports that marshals delivered under emergency protocol, and as she sifted through testimonies connecting officers to the shadowy patron, she realized the conspiracy formed a web stretching across borders, involving retired officials, corporate donors, and political strategists who benefited from manipulating communities through fear and control. Outside her window, protesters gathered, chanting her name alongside demands for accountability, while media helicopters circled the building like vigilant hawks. Suddenly the fire alarm screeched through the hallway, and the marshals burst in, urging her to evacuate because someone had breached the security gate. Footsteps thundered closer, gunshots cracked, and amid the chaos, a masked intruder, later identified as a former officer previously indicted but never arrested, stormed into her chambers intending to silence her permanently. The confrontation lasted mere seconds, but Amara, protected by marshals, witnessed the terrifying truth. The conspirators were desperate enough to attempt an assassination, proving that the case threatened powerful people with everything to lose. After the intruder was subdued, Amara made a decision that would change the trajectory of the investigation. She ordered all evidence to be transferred to federal oversight and called for an emergency live-streamed hearing the next morning to ensure public visibility. By dawn, her decision went viral, with millions from the US and UK tuning in, rallying behind her courage. When court resumed, Amara entered under federal guard, her presence commanding the room, and began revealing the corruption chain step by step. From falsified arrests to coordinated harassment campaigns to international funding channels, the implicated officers watched in horror as their world unraveled. The biggest twist came when Detective Rourke handed over a flash drive containing recordings of private meetings where the patron explicitly ordered the removal of problematic judges, naming Amara directly, proving premeditated targeting. Agents arrested several officers in real time during the live hearing, and the courtroom erupted with cheers from the gallery, but Amara remained composed, knowing justice must always remain grounded, not celebratory. Before adjourning, she delivered a final, powerful statement asserting that justice is not a weapon but a shield meant for all communities, especially those long marginalized or silenced, and she vowed to continue overseeing the case despite threats. Her bravery sparked national reforms, congressional hearings, and new international protocols on police accountability. In both the United States and the United Kingdom, her name became synonymous with fearlessness. That evening, standing on the courthouse steps where she had been dragged like a criminal just one day earlier, she addressed the crowd, declaring that no system, no matter how corrupted, is beyond repair when people stand together for truth. Cameras flashed, chants swelled, and Judge Amara Ellison walked forward into history, not as a victim of injustice, but as the woman who confronted it. head on and changed everything.